Hi everyone, my name is Jeff Mathias and this is my assignment for Module 13 titled Tort Liability. I've defined for you what a tort is, also what liability is, but when you look at tort liability, it's basically whose legal obligation or the legal obligation one party has to a victim in the event that some type of civil wrong has been committed. So that could be something that someone suffers a loss from or suffers harm from. And in the court cases that I've chosen today, most of them are centered around things that I could potentially see experiencing in my own educational background. And there's one in particular that's a little close to home that I'll talk about at the end. But moving on, here's my first case. My first case was from our required reading, and it was Flanagan versus Canton. And just to give you a short summary of what's going on, this is a locker room scenario. You've got fifth grade students that are being disruptive. PE teacher warns the students, hey, stop screwing around. Last 5 minutes of class, they normally go to the locker room to change. They go in, teacher gets sidetracked by another student asking a question. In the process, boys in the locker room are acting like boys. One gets pushed, falls down, suffers some significant injuries that require surgery, and the school district then gets sued, or at least the gym teacher gets sued. Now, the claim was that the gym teacher was being negligent. Like, typically the gym teacher would have gone in, would have observed the situation, make sure that nothing is taking place. In that moment, however, seemed to get sidetracked. And in this court case, the court eventually ruled in favor of the students and saying that the teacher did owe a greater duty in supervising the students in that scenario. And the reason this hits home is I've coached basketball for a long time, and it's very hard to be in that locker room every single second that the kids are in there by themselves. And so, you know, this is one of those scenarios that is very real. It could happen to many people across the educational spectrum. And looking at how my district, I feel like my district would handle this, I think there would obviously be an investigation immediately into the practices and protocols when it comes to locker rooms, whether it be sports related or whether it just be a PE related situation. And I think initially the district would make sure that during PE scenarios you had a male and a female presence at the end of class in particular to make sure the locker rooms are monitored. I don't know how that would necessarily look in terms of, you know, sports. It may be a tad bit different, but I think that's where my school would focus immediately. In terms of what I would do as an administrator to be proactive, I would make sure that my protocols were locked down tight. I would know what they are immediately, have them posted in board policy so that there was really no confusion. Also, I would try to routinely check up on teachers to make sure we're abiding by those policies, just so that we can protect our students and ourselves. And also, I think it's important to train our employees. You know, make sure not only that you know the policy, but you understand the consequences if the policy isn't followed through on. So that's how I would handle, you know, the situation that's been presented in that court case. My second case is focusing more on the classroom. And what you've got is in Frame versus Kamei, you have a substitute teacher that has a disruptive science class. He's already forced a couple students to leave the classroom. Another student acts up, tells this student, who happens to be Casey Frame, that he's got to go. As Mr. Frame is standing up, the substitute teacher grabs him by the arm to usher him out. He loses his balance, falls into a podium, eventually into a blackboard, and eventually tries to file a lawsuit against the substitute teacher claiming battery and assault. The courts actually found in favor of the substitute teacher in this case, claiming that the equal educational opportunities that the rest of the students had was being infringed on by Casey Frame. Therefore, the action was completely justified. And so, you know, the situation, like, obviously, confrontations happen in a classroom. I mean, this could have happened in any classroom, and it could happen to any teacher, not just a substitute. How my school, I think, would handle this immediately in terms of the substitute, they'd probably put him or her in a probationary period of time just to kind of monitor the situation, investigate it fully, make sure you know all the details. But then I also think there would be some type of, you know, mandatory staff training as well as substitute training as to how to deal with some type of, you know, interventions. Like, how do we deal with those situations where there is conflict in a classroom? In terms of my strategy, how I would be proactive, I was make sure, once again, to look through board policy, make sure we have something in the books, but also evaluated? Does the school board policy need to be reevaluated and edited? And once again, staff training. I think it has to happen at the beginning of the year. It's got to be something that you focus on. Whether you spend a whole day on it or not, that's not necessarily what I mean. But you need to look at it and make sure that teachers are aware of it and to be cognizant of, if the event happens, okay, I can't react this way or that way. My third case, unfortunately, it seems like these days is happening more often than not, or not more often than not, but it's happening more often. And it's titled Gebster versus Lago Vista Independent School District. And what you basically had is a high school student that was having a sexual relationship with a high school teacher. And it was secret, but it was eventually discovered, and the teacher was immediately arrested and fired. And what eventually happens is the parents of the student file a lawsuit against the school district claiming that the student was harassed, and it was a violation of Title IX of the Educational Amendments of 1972. And this case is actually going to go to the Supreme Court. You're going to find that Lago Vista, the school district, that the court found in favor of Lago Vista, claiming that a couple things need to take place before this can actually be something that Gebster would have won. First, the school district knew nothing about it. It was a secret affair. If the school district knew about it and failed to act on it, then they could definitely be held liable. But since it was a secret affair, the school district has no responsibility to take action. And so once again, Lago Vista School District ended up winning this suit. How my school would most likely handle this, once again, I think, most people probably recognize that this type of activity is wrong, but I think it's important that we look at it going forward from a legal perspective. So I think my school district would talk with the staff, say, here are the legal consequences of such actions, here's how the state sees it, here's how the federal government sees it, here's what our board policy is, and then once again, staff training. But I think, for me, on a proactive from a proactive view, I think you've got to not only look at your board policy, but I think this is something that you train teachers on at an early date. Not just at the beginning of the year, but I would focus in particular on my new teachers, young teachers, someone that's just coming out of college, somebody that's going to be closer in age to the students. I think it's very important to make sure they're aware of the consequences immediately of such actions, so that hopefully you can prevent it from happening in your district. The fourth court case that I chose was called Rollins versus Concordia Parish School Board. This happened in 1985, and you've got a situation where a substitute PE teacher took the class out to a playground. A group of girls are cruising around on the merry-go-round. It's going way too fast. Teacher steps in, says, hey, this is a bad idea. You're going to hurt yourself, and then get sidetracked by some boys fighting over a basketball. And so as she turns and goes over to deal with that, one of the girls, Lisa Rollins, gets flung off the merry-go-round, breaks her leg, and parents sue the school board, claiming that they were negligent in supervising that activity. And what the courts found is that there was actually a 50-50 responsibility here. Yeah, they claimed that the teacher, the substitute teacher, should have been facing or dealing with the more perilous situation rather than saying this is bad, you're going to get hurt, and then turning to something that wasn't as immediate. And so they actually found in favor of Rollins. She was given or granted $5,000 to help pay for medical bills, and they also did recognize that Rollins was at fault as well. The girls could have stopped the activity, but they failed to. In terms of how my school would most likely deal with this, I feel like reactively, if it's playground equipment that's causing problems consistently, they'd get rid of it. But I think they'd also add additional eyes to a PE setting or a recess setting, so paras, other teachers, just to kind of monitor more and more situations. In terms of proactive, once again, staff training. I think you also need to create, and this can kind of apply to a lot of situations. I think you could actually look into a strong mentoring program so that younger teachers or just teachers in general have some support, so that they know different situations that could pop up and they can be more aware of how to handle them. So that's how I would handle that. My last case is the one that I don't want to say it's super close to home, but I actually am just starting golf season, coaching golf this year, and so I found this one to be kind of interesting. And it's a little extreme. You got Broadcheck versus Millard School District, and this is a little older case, but what you basically had is a golf course being taught in a PE classroom, and it just so happens that because of weather they moved it inside, and so the students had very strict protocol as to what they were supposed to do in order to be safe. The first day they go through safety training, how to swing the club, what to do, what not to do. The second day they actually start hitting golf balls, and inside they were hitting wiffle balls, which obviously don't travel as far, they're plastic, great. But one of the students, David, was actually absent. He missed the safety training, and so on the second day, while everybody else is hitting, he was asking another student how to go about doing this. And while that other student actually started to show him, David was standing back far enough away. The student took 2 practice swings, was very aware of where David was, but when he got ready to hit the ball, David had moved forward, and in his backswing, he struck David on the head, knocking him unconscious. And unfortunately, 2 days later, David died from his injuries. And so the school district was sued by David's parents claiming negligence. And in this court case, even though the school had written down policies how, if they did bring golf indoors, how they would handle it, because the teachers, there was 2 in this situation, weren't aware and didn't know or didn't pay close attention to David in particular in this situation and were focusing on other students, they were negligent according to the courts, and they did find in favor of Bracek, and his parents were awarded $53,000, more than $53,000 in financial restitution. And once again, this was appealed, but they didn't win the appeal. The school district did not win the appeal. How my school district would handle this, I think in the initial reaction would be to get rid of golf. In particular, get rid of the training indoors. I mean, it would make it only an outdoor situation. And also, I think this is something that if you are going to do it, which I think it's perfectly fine to do, you've just got to make sure that it's not just a one-day safety thing, and all kids have to go through it. If one kid misses it, he can't participate until he has gone through the safety training. In terms of proactive measures, I think you've got to make sure that the people that are teaching it are aware of the difficulties, are aware of the potential problems and the liabilities. So these are trained individuals. And I also think there has to be a very detailed guide as to how it will be taught, and it must be followed to the book, extreme punishments even if students don't follow the rules because of the potential consequences. So, these have been interesting cases to look at. My references right here. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with.